Meet the Theranos Edison, a sleek white box that was supposed to change blood testing forever. No needles, no vials, just a single drop from your finger, and in minutes it would run hundreds of tests. That was the story Elizabeth Holmes sold to investors, to Walgreens, to a vice president, and they bought it to the tune of a $9 billion valuation. But when regulators finally opened that white box, they found something very different. Not a medical breakthrough, but a machine that couldn't even pass its own design validation. Today, we're doing an autopsy on the device itself, the Edison machine, the mini lab, the core of a promise that simply could not survive testing. Before we open the case file, hit subscribe for more product autopsies, drop the gadget you want investigated next in the comments, and tap like so we can keep digging up the tech everyone tried to forget. Here's the first number that tells the story. 12. According to the SEC's 2018 complaint, the Theranos mini lab could, at its peak, run just 12 tests. Not the 90% of all blood tests that Holmes claimed in investor meetings, not the hundreds promised on stage. 12. And if you want to understand how far that was from the truth, the SEC found that Theranos used modified commercial analyzers made by Siemens and others to process the vast majority of patient samples. Your finger prick blood wasn't being analyzed by revolutionary tech, it was being run on the same machines your local Quest Diagnostics uses, just with smaller volumes it was never designed for. The Edison machine was, at best, a limited prototype being sold as a finished product. This is where the product narrative starts to fracture. Theranos didn't just fail to deliver a magical machine, they hid that failure behind a curtain of third-party equipment. According to the SEC, the company conducted the vast majority of patient tests not on the Edison, but on modified and industry-standard commercial analyzers. And they did it while telling partners like Walgreens that their proprietary device was ready. The FDA later noted that Theranos had cleared only a single test for herpes simplex virus on their device. Everything else, outsourced. In a deposition, Holmes admitted, "I know that we made mistakes." But by the time she said that, the machine had already been making mistakes on real patients. In October 2015, the FDA released its inspection reports, and the language is brutally bureaucratic. One line stands out: design validation did not ensure the device conforms to defined user needs and intended uses. Translation: the Edison machine wasn't properly tested against what it was supposed to do. Inspectors also found that complaint handling procedures weren't established, meaning when things went wrong, there was no formal process to catch them. Observation after observation painted a picture of a device launched with gaping holes in its quality system. This wasn't a minor paperwork error. This was evidence that the machine, the very hardware at the center of a $9 billion company, had never passed the basic checks required of a blood testing instrument. Amid all the hype, one quiet fact got buried. The Edison machine received FDA clearance for exactly one test: herpes simplex virus. That's it. You can look it up in the FDA's 510K database, K143236. A single clearance, not hundreds, not even a dozen. To be clear, 510K is a pre-market notification, not an approval, and it's the minimum bar for market entry. Yet Theranos was running tests on patients for everything from cholesterol to cancer, most of them on those secret commercial machines. The regulatory gap between the one cleared test and the menu they offered in Walgreens stores was a canyon, and it was only a matter of time before someone fell in. Now let's talk about the money that fueled the dream. In 2014, Theranos told investors it would generate over $100 million in revenue. The actual number, according to the SEC, was around $100. Zero. That's a thousand-fold gap. Imagine pitching a device that can run only 12 tests, is mostly bypassed in your own lab, and has one FDA clearance, and then telling investors you'll make $100 million. That wasn't optimism, that was a bridge between a broken product and a fantasy valuation. And the bridge was held up by the reputation of the board and the charisma of the founder, not by any data the machine could produce. Walgreens was the perfect retail partner. Thousands of stores, millions of customers, and a hunger for healthcare innovation. In 2010, Holmes showed executives a written promise that Theranos machines would handle nearly any blood test by year's end. By 2013, they launched Theranos Wellness Centers in Walgreens stores. But behind the counter, the Edison machines were failing. According to the SEC, Walgreens never knew that most tests were processed on modified Siemens analyzers, not the Edison. By 2016, Walgreens sued for breach of contract, and the partnership collapsed. The device that was supposed to sit in every pharmacy ended up as a trial exhibit instead. Inside Theranos, the device was a source of constant stress. Former employees later testified that the Edison machines frequently failed quality control, yet the pressure to deliver results for partners was immense. According to ABC News, a former lab director said in a deposition that the devices were not working. The company's culture, described by employees as one of secrecy and fear, meant that engineers couldn't speak openly about problems. Whistleblowers who did were met with legal threats. The machine needed more time, more engineering, more honesty, but instead it got marketing and a vice presidential photo op. When your own lab director can see the cracks, you know the product is already in the graveyard. In the end, the Edison machine had its day in court, not as a revolutionary product, but as evidence. The SEC's 2018 complaint laid out the device's failures in black and white: the one clearance, the 12 tests, the modified commercial machines. In her deposition, Holmes admitted mistakes but deflected blame. The machine itself was presented as proof of a vast gap between promise and performance. While the prosecuted trials focused on intent, the civil case painted the device as a beautiful box of empty promises. It's rare that a piece of hardware testifies against its own creator, but the Edison did exactly that. By 2016, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services had sanctioned Theranos, banning Holmes from operating a lab for 2 years. Partners fled, investors sued, and in September 2018, what was left of the company dissolved. The $9 billion valuation evaporated into a tax write-off. The Edison machine, once the star of a Silicon Valley fairy tale, was now just a cautionary artifact. It never received the broad FDA clearance it needed, never proved its accuracy in independent studies, and never fulfilled the promise that got the boardroom standing ovations. The graveyard claimed not just a company, but the illusion that a beautiful story can substitute for basic engineering. So what does the Edison machine teach us? First, that in medical devices, design validation isn't optional, it's the foundation. The FDA's 483 report showed that Theranos skipped steps that every device maker must take. Second, that a prototype is not a product. The mini lab was a work in progress sold as finished, and that gap cost investors $700 million. Third, that when a device doesn't work, you can't outmarket physics. No amount of board star power or media adulation can make a blood test accurate if the engineering is broken. The Edison gravestone should read, "Here lies a machine that promised everything and validated nothing." Perhaps the most damning thing you can say about the Edison machine is that it never even had a chance to fail on its own terms, because it was never really used. The tests that did run on it were so unreliable that the company had to cheat, processing the rest on machines they didn't build. In the end, the device's greatest achievement wasn't a medical breakthrough, it was becoming a symbol of what happens when a product narrative detaches from reality. The Theranos Edison didn't just fail a validation test, it failed the most basic test of them all, the truth. And in our product graveyard, that's the one failure that guarantees a spot. Thanks for walking through the autopsy of the Theranos Edison machine. If you enjoy these product death stories, subscribe and hit the bell, because in this graveyard, there's always another overhyped gadget waiting for its postmortem. And remember, next time you see a sleek medical device promising to change the world, ask for the validation data, not the valuation. Data. The Edison is just one headstone in our growing collection of tech that promised too much and delivered too little, because a $9 billion story can vanish with a single FDA Form 483. See you in the next episode.